Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Oregon's offensive line hasn't allowed a sack. Adrian Klemm off to a great start as the Ducks' new offensive line coach. So why doesn't Oregon have a commit on the offensive line, the class of 2023?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Like, comment, subscribe, please, wherever you're listening to or watching the show if you have not already, which today is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online is where the game starts, and I am finally rejoined on the show by John Garcia Jr., the director of recruiting for Sports Illustrated and the newest father here at the Locked On Podcast Network, little Luca Lorenzo out there. It's a name tailor-made for television one day, and I would love to be announcing it at some point in time. But John, it's good to have you back on the show, and congratulations, new big dad.
I appreciate that, Spencer. I like the manifestation. Let's keep that trend going in all fronts here. I believe in it. Yeah, it's been a heck of a few weeks. And we've also got a hurricane in our great state of Florida right now too. So it's just another September. It's just another one that we won't forget.
Just another September. First time father, hurricane. What else could possibly be going on that is eventful? But with you back, we're, of course, talking recruiting. And I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, John, the season and how things play out affect recruiting. I think everybody understands that you win, you're going to be able to go after players and catch their interest, and they're going to see, oh yeah, I watched that game, I watched this game, and that team looked really good. And I think this all kind of started for the Ducks back with all of the new uniform combinations. People watching going, man, they don't look like anybody else. They look so cool. And Oregon recruiting has come a long way since then. But one thing I find peculiar is that the offensive line has been a staple for the Ducks with Mario Cristobal and company, and that unit that they've built is off to. I don't know if they could be off to a better start so far. Bo Nix hasn't been sacked through the first 4 weeks. They're running the ball well with whatever running back is back there, and yet there are no offensive line commits in the class of 2023. Is that a concern at all for the Ducks right now?
It's if the next few guys we talk about don't end up there, I think then it becomes a bit of a concern. But as we get into the weather turning and it's officially fall, at least in other parts of the country, as that continues and there are zero commitments at that spot, yes, I would start to worry. But I do think the Ducks are going to get this figured out closer to National Signing Day, and there are a couple things that could potentially slow down that part of the process. First of all, the offensive line talent appears to be less prevalent in that part of the country. Look, Oregon has always had to recruit nationally, but within that Pac-12 footprint, it's not a steadily strong offensive line year. It appears as if the best tackles in particular are more in the Southeast and the East Coast in general. So I do think that, combined with a natural transition of coaching staff, probably slowed down the Ducks on that front to a degree. But let's not also discount last year's cycle, how Dan Lanning and company jumped on board and got these guys signed, committed, and enrolled. A really strong group led by Josh Connerly was a big part of that. So I do think, while it's not as talked about as quarterbacks, maybe looking at the depth chart and the class ahead, I do think that could have created a little bit of apprehension with some of the O linemen that this group was now going to target, because they just brought in a heck of a group after, as you alluded to, stacking great O-line classes one after the other under the previous staff.
Oregon's recruiting class currently sits 13th nationally, which that's perfectly good enough for me to win at a high level. But still, even with Jurion Dickey and Dante Moore, not in that order necessarily, leading the way, you still always want to have as much depth as you can. I think Oregon's seeing that with the running back position this year. We saw it with linebacker a year ago with the injuries and the revolving door there. Like, the reason we talk recruiting so much is it ends up having an impact on the field and guys that often play sooner than you think they might. Josh Connerly's not a starter for the Ducks, but he's now playing every week in this jumbo package that they have. And this offensive line is so good, and part of the reason is Adrian Klemm is doing a good job. He deserves a lot of credit coming down from the NFL and connecting with those kids and getting them to continue to play on the same page. But part of that also is that this is a unit that has played a lot of football together. And Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal are very good offensive line coaches and very good offensive line recruiters who have put guys in the NFL, and they've developed some of the best offensive lines we've seen at Oregon in the last 10, 15 years or so. But going forward, it's going to be, I feel, a different challenge, right? Like the biggest test for Adrian Klemm is not necessarily how the line performs this year, because he's, kind of been handed the keys to the car and it's just like, hey, don't crash it. But next year, he's got to build that car kind of from scratch.
100%. And I think that's part of any transition, right? I mean, and I think philosophically, if you look at what Cristobal and company wanted to do versus now what Lanning and Kenny Dillingham want to do, it looks and feels different, right? I mean, it's a little bit more modern nowadays, a little bit more spread in nature nowadays, and a different type of blocking scheme, really. I think Cristobal is more old school downhill. And now with Dillingham and crew, it's a little bit more zone based and modern in nature. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a different feel here going forward, at least schematically, with the type of lineman maybe you go after. It's not, the bigger, the stronger, the better necessarily with this current coaching staff. So I think there's been a lot of transition just in general there. But look, they're going to figure things out. Adrian Klemm, played the sport. He's coached in the Pac-12. He just came from the NFL, as you mentioned. They're going to figure that thing out, and we know the combination of Lanning and Dillingham with their ties, to the SEC. They want to build that line of scrimmage just as bad. So it's not going to be an issue much moving forward. They've already addressed a lot of those needs on the defensive line, which is like the biggest position group that Oregon's got on board right now. So a lot of that attention and focus, the remainder of the 23 cycle, will probably move to that O-line group, and timeliness will be a part of that as well. And this coming weekend, there'll be some big names on campus.
Yeah, and obviously the rest of the class, like you mentioned, it is pretty well balanced
Yeah.
at this point in time. Not a lot of linebackers in there, but the previous classes have been pretty heavy at that spot. You got Keith Brown, you got Devin Jackson, Harrison Taggart, who are waiting in the wings, and of course, Noah Sewell, Justin Flo probably gone to the NFL after this year. Flo, maybe not. We'll see whether or not he can stay healthy. But Jeffrey Boss is a guy who will be back for another season, so I feel good about Oregon at that position. But Tyler Turner's there at safety, plus Trajan Williams, class of 2022. The DBs have been coming in, and we'll talk about another Oregon DB later. But I want to stick with this offensive line for the moment, John, because I want to get to some of the names that you talked about that the Ducks have to start to kind of find. And the state of Oregon, Dawson Jaramillo and his brother Bailey, who I believe is a walk-on, are on the roster. And Dawson, a regular rotation offensive lineman, to be sure. But it seems like the state of Oregon doesn't produce a lot of high-level offensive linemen. They just don't have that sort of depth of bodies. You see, Connerly come from the state of Washington. That's pretty common. But one place where, because of the Polynesian connection to the state of Utah, you can find a good number of guys. And Spencer Fano, who I believe is Polynesian of some sort. I'm not, don't quote me on that, but there have been a lot of good offensive linemen to come out of there. Penei Sewell. And Spencer Fano is a guy that the Ducks have in their sights. What kind of player is he, and how good a chance does Oregon have?
Yeah, when I talked about maybe the shifting philosophy, I think Spencer Fano is like the perfect guy to talk about, because he's not Penei Sewell in terms of like, okay, so this is 6'5", 320 pounds of brawn coming
Athleticism.
at you, and
Yeah.
athleticism and everything else. This is a 6'4", 6'5", 270-pound player, more of a Josh Connerly in his build, in that he's going to become a modern tackle type, a great athlete, two-way player, as you mentioned. Got that Polynesian background, coming out of Provo, so a very interesting city, to be recruiting out of. But look, there's some traction here with the Ducks. This isn't a BYU lock. Maybe a year ago, it kind of felt that way, but he's not the BYU lock that he was, mainly because he keeps showing a ton of athleticism on tape, and other programs have jumped in. Oregon, Utah, of course, in that conversation, the in-state school. Michigan is one that's trying to pull him out of the Pac-12 footprint altogether. So this is going to be a fascinating recruitment for an ascending prospect who, again, fits the more modern mold of what teams are looking for at tackle, because they want to build them up to 295, 300 pounds, as opposed to trimming them down like we saw, in the early 2000s, really up until this modern era.
And is that because you want to, have that athleticism and ability to deal with that sort of edge prospects, I assume, right?
Yeah, look, they're getting smaller, quicker, and lower to the ground, right? Your Reggie Whites of yesteryear are all defensive tackles now. So now you're dealing on the edge with the Von Millers of the world that are 255, 260 pounds that can get, seemingly an inch off the ground when they bend around the corner. So naturally, you've got to be longer, lighter, leaner, and more swift to give that type of ground against that type of pass rusher. But also even in the run game, right? We're seeing the passing game utilized as an extension of the run, and Oregon is showing this a little bit early in the season, right? The screen game, quick hitters, bubble screens, all those things, jet sweeps, all point towards a more nimble and swift offensive lineman. But it doesn't mean you don't want him to be elite at the point of contact and strong in the leverage department when he does get into those bigger defenders. So it's a bit of a blend between the two. But yeah, naturally, the first thing that makes you think of, hey, why are these guys longer and leaner than they were previously? It's because of the other side of the ball and these game-wrecking pass rushers. I mean, Will Anderson's probably the best college football player in America. He's like 250 pounds, right? Coming off the edge and wrecking everybody's game. So I do think that's become a part of the shift in the desired offensive tackle from a frame perspective, at least.
Well, there's another offensive line prospect I want to ask John about after I remind you all this episode brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, Bet Online remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. If you've never done live betting before, let me tell you, that is electric. Absolutely electric stuff. Live betting a football game. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball. Go Mariners. We are stumbling to the finish line. MMA, boxing, and my personal favorite, golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. So, John, another offensive line prospect that Oregon has in their sights. I'm going to do my best to not butcher this, but
Let's go. Let's
Iapani
go.
Laloulu. Yeah, I
That's
don't
how I
know.
say it.
All right, we'll call it good then. We'll refer to him as Iapani, but he's a guy who Adrian Klemm and company have in their sights. What sort of player is he? What's his background? And where's Oregon with him?
This is the total opposite from a height and weight and frame standpoint than Spencer Fano, right? 6'5", like 340 or so. I mean, just a massive interior prospect, right? So
Yeah,
you're getting a
guard.
bit of variance in the type of offensive lineman Oregon wants, right? Their interior guys are going to be bigger, lower to the ground, just built for the run game. And then the tackles are going to be a bit lighter and leaner going forward to combat these edge rushers. So yeah, Iapani, the total opposite from a frame perspective, but very good in his own right. Naturally, you expect him to be great in the run blocking game. And yes, we do see a lot of that on tape. But look, he's also more nimble than his size would suggest. He moves better than 335, 340 would appear on paper. So I do think that he has become a more intriguing and coveted offensive lineman over the last 6 months, really this offseason on the camp and combine circuit. First of all, he's from Hawaii, so harder to make those impressions on folks outside of the footprint. But then you get into the camp circuit and the combine circuit, and you're on these college campuses, and schools are able to verify, oh, okay, this kid does move a lot better than maybe we thought he was going to. So then you couple that with the size, and all of a sudden your stock goes up. And we hear, Miami's still, looking around with him. Obviously, he's from Hawaii. They're involved. Oregon is probably at the forefront of this recruitment as well as some other schools. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to see when he starts to settle the process. But look, Oregon has got his brother on campus right now. He's going to visit this weekend. So I do think that everything is kind of lining up. Fa Ope Laloulu is his brother. So I don't know if I said that right. That's his brother, and he's a sophomore with the Ducks right now. So naturally, the Ducks are going to have a bit of an advantage, at least from an informational perspective. Hey, how was the transition from Cristobal to this coaching staff to Dan Lanning? How was Adrian Klemm versus Alex Mirabal? All of those things that are really important for an offensive lineman in particular, he's going to have a little bit more insight on, and now he'll be able to check it on his own when he comes to town for this next game. So big visits coming up for the Ducks at the offensive line spot, and I think both of these guys could end up wearing green before all is said and done, particularly with Laloulu, because I think, Clem's got the Hawaii connections, obviously, coaching his brother right now. So naturally, there's so much familiarity that you feel pretty good about that. With Fano, I do think, look, Provo kid, those in-state schools are going to be heavy on him. And Michigan, if there's a school that can pull you out, Michigan offers, some intrigue and some kind of classic, trench style from an offensive line perspective that a lot of kids still do resonate with.
We might need to issue an apology to the Polynesian and Samoan community because we're trying. Like I looked at the name, I said it out loud over and over again, and it's a difficult thing. It takes some time. Plus, he's relatively new on Oregon's radar. But yeah, definitely noteworthy that his brother is already on the roster, because I feel like at offensive line, a position where it's almost expected that you're not going to start right away unless you're Penei Sewell. I mean, even Josh Connerly, who's playing right away, he's not starting right
Right.
away. I think there's an expectation for offensive linemen, and we've talked about this before, John, more so than skill positions, where you understand I'm not going to be a starter right away. I'm going to have to bulk up a little, and there's going to be an adjustment there. And for someone who understands that, even for a guy like Laloulu, who is a 4-star prospect, and it also has Arizona in the mix, and they've recruited
Yeah,
well
they're in
the
there too.
past couple of seasons. Having your brother there might be something that helps keep you going, is a sense of comfort or motivation for someone who's going to be putting in the work at practice but won't be seeing the field. So interesting to definitely follow that. Both of those guys, Fano and Lalalu, do you have a timeline on when they could potentially commit?
Yeah, I think Fano is a little bit more familiar with his options, right? Again, we talked about the two in-state schools that he's extremely familiar with. He's already been out to Oregon. He's returning to Oregon October 1st this weekend. So I do think that those boxes will be checked. I'm not sure about Michigan. I'm not sure if he made it out there just yet or if he is scheduled to soon get out there. But really, that would be the last box for him to check, because he did announce just the other day that this was his final four. So he did confirm that, hey, this is the final group of schools that I'm going to look at. So once he visits Oregon, and then we assume soon gets to Ann Arbor, I think we can get a decision shortly thereafter. And then with Laloulu, we haven't seen any plans beyond this weekend, right? If Miami is starting to get into the picture, can they get him on campus? Of course, this previous coaching staff might have recruited him or started to recruit him while they were at Oregon. So maybe that can provide some continuity, but it's not easy to travel from Hawaii either. So not sure if he has to take all these trips before all is said and done. But up to date, he's only taken one official. That was to Arizona, who I should have mentioned earlier, and gained some momentum when he did, take that summer trip, I believe in the month of June. So we'll see if he's going to take more officials. He certainly has the time to do so, but I would imagine Oregon gets one or both of these guys on board before all is said and done. It would be considered a miss if you missed on both. So I don't think they drop into that territory here, and they're going to be on campus together this weekend. So you never know what that could become at the back end of this recruiting pitch. So especially if there's some continuity there, both, Polynesian descendants. I know Fano is an LDS member. Not sure about Laloulu, so I think that'll be interesting as well. And it should be said that, I know as soon as I say that, Oregon fans are going to be like, well, great. Our students were chanting XYZ. He did, Fano did celebrate Coach Lanning's response in detracting
Yeah.
those negative comments. So he did celebrate that publicly. So again, and he's obviously visiting this weekend. So I wouldn't read into that as a detractor for the Oregon pitch relative to BYU in particular.
Let's go to the defensive side of the ball now, John. And Caleb Presley is Oregon's highest rated defensive commit in the class of 2023, number one player in the state of Washington. Same high school, if memory serves, as Josh Connerly, Rainier
Yep.
Beach. And he's, high 4-star guy. He was at that Washington Michigan State game, and he was not making any bones about it. That he was out there exploring the options. And look, I understand it, right? It might frustrate fans of programs out there, or this particular program, that you have a guy who's verbally committed, but he's still weighing his options. But for all of you eligible bachelors out there, if you had interest from a really cute brunette over here, and then an adorable redhead was also saying she might want to take you out, you telling me you wouldn't weigh both of those two options? Like, I've never been in that position before, either Caleb Presley's or the hypothetical one that I just laid out. But it's hard to, when you're getting legitimate interest from that many high profile schools, it's tough to turn them down, right? Is there any concern here that Presley could be a guy who eventually flips to Washington, the state where he's from, and the Huskies have looked really, really good so far?
Look, and I think, yeah, you can build kind of the fear argument, right? Look, he's a local kid to UW. UW was in it before he picked UO. And yeah, the Huskies look better than everyone outside of Seattle thought they were going to look in 2022. So following that up with a game visit, it could easily be painted as a panic scenario, but I'm not quite there. I think, like you said, extremely coveted. This is year one under that coaching staff. So, hey, maybe I want to go see just what it looks like, what it feels like. Is it the same? Is it different? All of those things. He was able to take his mom to the game as well. He's saying all the right things on top of that. So I tend to give kids the benefit of the doubt until it becomes a trend, right? If he starts just saying, hey, I wanted to go see Texas A&M play, and I wanted to go see Michigan State, and then I wanted to go see, Purdue, then all of a sudden you pull back from that benefit of the doubt. But on the front end, I always give the kids the benefit of the doubt. And he is saying that he's still on board with Oregon 100%. And it should be noted, one, that was a really good game to watch going into it. A couple of teams that had high expectations or higher expectations this year. And Washington was able to kind of stamp their place on the national footprint with the win. And then two, Sparty, just like UW, was in on him before he picked Oregon. So those were two programs that he has built relationships with. So when they come to your backyard, it's really not the biggest issue if you go check them out. So I think that's just par for the course. It is recruiting in 2022. This is something that you're going to have to deal with, right? Dante Dowdle might go to Ole Miss this weekend. Dante Moore, I'm sure, still receiving phone calls. He's told me he's still receiving phone calls from other programs still looking for a QB1. So it's just something that if you want to continue to be the class of Pac-12 recruiting, it's just something you got to deal with, especially when you go into other folks' territory and pull out great talent like a Caleb Presley. So at this point, don't panic just yet. But if it becomes a trend, then you probably perk your ears up a little bit more.
Lastly, John, the three big edge prospects that I will be disappointed if Oregon does not get one of: Samuel Mpemba, David Hicks, he's an interior defensive lineman, and Mateo Uyangalele. Just go rapid fire on all three. Timelines, where Oregon's at with them. What's the latest on those three 5-star defensive linemen?
Yeah, well, look, Oregon's in the top group for all of them, so that goes without saying. And Pemba finally starting to get out on the visit trail to a degree. I think he's going to go see Georgia, Missouri this weekend. Notre Dame's going to get an official. It'll be his first official, so the next move for Oregon there. Can you get one of these remaining 4 official visits? I'd venture to say yes. It's the only West Coast program he continues to talk about, and he's become extremely familiar with some of the more local options: Miami, Florida, Tennessee, LSU, that he could kind of drive to. So naturally, I do think Oregon could be in position for an official down the line. David Hicks is going to come off the board first here, probably in the next 24 hours. He's coming off the board with a verbal commitment. He just announced it'll be on ESPN. I don't think that's the best news for the Ducks. I think the long game was the best news for Oregon there. He has spent the early part of the season close to home. He's been to Texas A&M and Oklahoma, I believe, multiple times. So there is some buzz with those two programs. A&M's always held buzz with him. Now Oklahoma's claimed a little bit of that under their new coaching staff. The Venables, Todd Bates defensive duo there is similar to Lanning and Lupoy, where it does have hold a lot of weight. So I think Oklahoma could maybe pull the upset there. And then with Uyangalele, the opposite. longer timeline, a ton of visits, going to see a lot of big games. He was at Ohio State, Notre Dame. He was at Oregon. They played at Oregon earlier this year. St. John Bosco did.
Right.
So he
They
got to
played
check
they
out
played
campus.
Central Catholic.
Right. So he got to check out campus one more time. So the Ducks are going to stay right in the thick of it. Again, I still think three teams that are in the thick of that race in the Pac-12 country, it's USC and Oregon, and then Ohio State, where he spent the first weekend of the season. Those are still the three schools for me in the running for him, but no timeline there. I still think later rather than sooner.
All the recruiting insight you could ever need, brought to you, of course, by LinkedIn Jobs. John Garcia Jr., Director of Recruiting for Sports Illustrated. I will leave you now to go get back to take care of your newborn son. Hope he and his mom are doing very well. John, it's great to have you on the show.
Yes, sir. Everyone's doing well. A huge blessing, and I appreciate you acknowledging such, brother. Take care.
Hey, you're very, very welcome, and you're welcome on this show any time. I know Duck fans love hearing from you. We'll get to all the things that Oregon needs to do against Stanford tomorrow. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.